A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, Lord.
Again, Jesus left the district of Tyre and went by way of Sidon to the Sea of Galilee, into the district of the Decapolis. And people brought to him a deaf man who had a speech impediment, and begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him off by himself away from the crowd. He put his finger into the man's ears, and spitting, touched his tongue. And then he looked up to heaven and groaned and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And immediately that man's ears were opened, his speech impediment was removed, and he spoke plainly. He ordered them not to tell anyone, but the more he ordered them not to, the more they proclaimed it. They were exceedingly astonished, and they said, He has done all things well. He makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Years ago, I could have never have imagined that I would fall in love with the Mass. I went to Mass 15 years ago, but it was just something you did. It wasn't something that you could ever think about loving. I never thought of skipping Mass on Sundays because it's the third commandment, and as my mom would always say, God gives you all your hours in the week. What's the big deal giving 1 hour back to God? So I went to Mass, but Mass wasn't something to like, it wasn't something to love, it was something to get through. And the quicker the better, if you know what I mean. That all began to change probably in my late teens, my early 20s, when I began to realize through God's grace the mystery of what's happening at Mass, and the intimacy that is being offered in the Mass. An intimacy, I would argue, is foreshadowed in today's gospel that we just heard. As we just heard, the man is brought to Jesus, a man who has been deaf and mute, presumably for a while. And you have to imagine the suffering that this man is undergoing. Not necessarily physical, but emotional and social suffering. At Jesus' time, if you were deaf and mute, first of all, you were kind of excluded as someone that was unfit or not completely full. And secondly, you couldn't communicate with anyone. There was no sign language. And so you can imagine the longing that this man had to be healed. And I'm sure his friends must have been praying to God the Father to heal him. But now they bring him to Jesus, the Son of God incarnate. Our God is not someone or something that just exists in some mysterious place up there, some ambiguous force like Star Wars. Our God came to be with us. Jesus' name, Emmanuel, means God is with us. And so this man is brought to Jesus. God is with us. And Jesus doesn't just say, be healed. No. He takes the man off by himself for this intimate encounter. He puts his finger in the man's ears. He takes some of the spit from his tongue and puts it on the man's tongue. Thus, he's sharing part of himself, part of his life, with this man to bring about his healing. And this beautiful moment of intimacy, this beautiful moment of encounter, is meant to fulfill the first reading today. That God would come to save his people. That God would come to open the ears of the deaf and allow the mute to speak. But what Jesus is also doing is he's foreshadowing all of our sacraments. As you all know, we have 7 sacraments. And in every sacrament, we use physical signs and physical gestures so that spiritual grace might be communicated to us. And this is exactly what Jesus does in the gospel. Now, the greatest sacrament that we have, the best sacrament that we have, is the Eucharist. And if you think about it, our experience at Mass is very similar to what happened in today's Gospel. All of us come to this church this morning longing, thirsting for something. Something more. More joy, more love, more fulfillment, more who knows what, but ultimately, more peace, more completeness. And we don't just come here to offer our prayers to God the Father, but God comes to be with us in the Mass. When those bells are ringing, that the altar server rings, as Catholics, we believe that God Himself, the Son of God, is coming into our midst under the appearances of bread and wine. But God doesn't remain distant from you on the altar as you were in the pews. Because in the moment of communion, Christ gives Himself, gives His life to you. He enters into this intimate encounter with you to bring about healing in your life, in my life. St. Augustine said, as human beings, our hearts are restless. Our hearts are restless until they rest in God. And every time we receive communion, we are literally getting a foretaste of heaven, a foretaste of resting in God. Brothers and sisters, when we understand this mystery, when we choose to believe this mystery, and we open our hearts to this mystery, then we begin to see that the Mass is never just something to do. It's only something to love. Because in the Mass, we're encountering a person, and persons are deserving of nothing but love. Now, I know I'm speaking to the choir, but because of this understanding of the Mass, this is why skipping Mass is such a big deal. A lot of times people say, well, what's the big deal? I miss Mass here or there. I mean, why is it a commandment? Why did the church have all these rules? It's not about the rules. It's about the fact that we're denying relationship. The Lord is offering us the most intimate communion we could possibly have with Him on earth today. And when we skip out, when we're not physically or mentally present at Mass, we're rejecting relationship. It's not about breaking a rule. Yes, it's a rule, but we're rejecting relationship. And that's why it's such a big deal. We are distancing ourselves from Christ. Brothers and sisters, the more we come to believe this mystery, and the more we open ourselves to it, the more we'll realize more and more the Mass is not something just to get over with. It's something to truly love and appreciate.